Hello, welcome back to Budget for Life. So glad you could join us again. Today, I want to talk to you in depth about how you can figure out whether or not you can afford a house. Now, this video is not about figuring out what your down payment is alone or the different investment strategies that you can use in investment vehicles. There's lots of other videos out there about that. I actually recently watched one from Bridget Casey, and I'll put that in the link. This video is really about understanding from a budget perspective what is the true cost of a home and can you afford it. So much of buying a house is focused on getting the down payment and what your mortgage costs will be without considering all of the other things that come with owning a house. Now, I personally, through various stages of my life, have been involved in buying 4 different houses. 3 of them were previously owned, and 1 was a new build. And so I have learned a lot from that process that if I had known these things back then, would have totally changed how I bought or what I bought. What would I do differently? What would I advise people who are looking to buy a house? Let's jump in and find out. First, it's really important to know all the details about what kind of house you want, because if you just wait for the bank to say, hey, we'll give you this much money, their interest is not necessarily what house you need. They'll tell you a maximum amount. Now that maximum amount could be a lot more house than you need. And then you're wasting money buying something you don't need. First thing I'd look at is your type. Do you want a condo, which has some special considerations on their own? Do you want a detached house, semi-detached, a townhouse? Where is the location? Location is really important. Are you going to be close to home? Or are you going to be close to the schools if you have children? Are you going to be closer to work? Is there a family consideration? Do you want to be central? And what are your driving distances going to be? Because that'll affect both your time and your costs depending on how far you have to travel. Another thing you want to look at is the number of rooms that you have in it, specifically bedrooms, considering people you have now in your family, future, maybe older relatives that might need to come live with you, or if you're going to have children. Also, if you're going to work from home, do you need to factor that into your house, which is a bigger consideration these days? Any special requirements? Do you want a chef's kitchen? Whoo! And as well, also figure in any deal breakers. So for example, if you have mobility issues, 2-story houses may be out of the question because you're just not going to make that work. Then you'll move to the next step, which is to actually cost out what that house is. Now in Canada, you've got realtor.ca. It's all the multiple listing service, I think it's called, MLS. All the realtors are on there. You can search out the houses using all of that criteria, location, everything. There are other resources out there as well. There's some flat fee companies that you could use, but do your research. Figure out what that house is going to cost you. Now that could open your eyes and go, ooh, didn't expect it to be that much. You might need to go back and refine your requirements, or you'll find something, but eventually you'll get that range of a house. You'll have a low and a high range. Once you have all that information, you're going to go to the next step, which is to figure out the actual mortgage cost for that house. Now this is only one piece of all the costs, so bear with me here, but you're going to go to online calculators. A lot of your banks have them. I'll also leave a link for Canada.ca, which has some really great independent financial calculators on it, one of which is a mortgage one. And you'll enter the information. I would recommend getting the mortgage amount based on lowest, mid, and high range of your options for the house you've priced out. As well, make sure you've considered in your interest factors. And then you can also even do different payment options. So the monthly, bi-monthly, bi-weekly, because those different options will change both the cost, long-term interest, and as well what you're going to pay on a monthly basis. So once you have that, that'll form it. Now you're going to figure out all of your other monthly costs. And this is a key part where people don't think, right? You get so excited, hey, I've got my mortgage, I'm going to figure out my down payment, off I go. Then when you go to operate your house, you'll realize, eek, there's all these other costs I hadn't considered. So that's what we're going to do now. Property tax. Most municipalities will have an online calculator for the value of the house to figure out your property taxes. Then the other thing you're going to check is your insurance requirements. So what is the insurance for that house? Then your utilities. So your utilities may be rolled into your rent, or maybe if you're living at home, you're not paying those, but you'll want to figure out what your monthly utilities are. Your maintenance costs. This is a huge piece of the money that isn't factored in. My husband and I both knew about it, but we didn't. Now that we have put that into our budget, it's made a huge difference. The accepted wisdom is usually anywhere between 1 to 4% of your house value set aside for maintenance of your home. If you're buying a newer home, you may want to be on the lower because it's going to take you longer before you meet those. Houses that are about 10 years, you might want to be higher because those are the ones that are going to get you with the hot water tank and the furnace and some of those other things coming due within 3 to 5 years. And then again, the highest end is if you're going to buy a house that's quite a bit older and you need to do a lot of different renovations or improvements to it. If you're buying a detached house or townhouse, you may want to put some for landscaping. Landscaping may be part of your maintenance. We've kept it separate because it's more about making the house pretty. So it's buying mulch and flowers and those kinds of things is what we put into the landscaping. If we are buying a condo, we mentioned a couple of things, your HOAs, your homeowner association fees. And then finally, in any of these options, you may want to have a security system, so investigating the cost of a security system. So now you have your mortgage and all the other costs. You're going to figure out what that monthly cost is, compare it to what you're paying now. So now you're paying rent, utilities, and tenant insurance. What is that? Let's say, for example, that totaled up to about $2,800 a month, but when you total all of those other things, it's going to be $4,000. So that's $1,200 a month more. What you're going to do is go to the next step and build your budget with that extra in as part of your house and live on that for 6 to 12 months. The reason I'm saying this, especially if you're a first-time homeowner, is to say, can I live on that amount and then have enough for all those other things? If 6 to 12 months, I haven't touched it, I'm not doing anything, I can live, I've got my other things, it's great, then hey, you can afford it. If you're finding though that you're getting frustrated because all this money is here and I can't go on this trip, or I can't buy this thing, or I can't do this activity, you may need to relook at what you have in your house and adjust that factor. Now the bonus is, after the 6 to 12 months, you will have that money for a down payment if you're deciding to go ahead, or saved it for something else. And what I would recommend is to repeat this process every year as you're going ahead. And the reason for that is housing prices can start to go wonky, as we saw during the pandemic. By doing a check-in every year, you can make sure that your house still meets your requirements and your costs. Because the other thing is your housing requirements may have changed. Maybe when you started factoring it in, you were single, no problems. 3 years in, you're married, have a baby on the way. Hey, maybe you need to change what you're looking for. One last bonus tip here for you is about a year before you're going to purchase your house. So now you're at the point where, hey, in the next year, I'm going to buy my house. What I want you to do is sit down and think about your moving costs. because this is the other thing that gets people. So what are my moving costs? That's your actual movers. Now, you could take professional movers. You could do something like the pods where you move it all into the pod and then they move the pod and you move it in. You could do the friends and family where they come and help you. Now, all of those will cost something generally, ranging from most expensive to maybe your friends are beer and pizza and some gas for the vehicles, but generally they're still going to cost you something. You may need to look at your connection fees. So when you move to a new home, you often have to have connection fees put in there for all your utilities. As you're moving, you're going to consider eating out or what your meals are going to be. Maybe you have to pre-plan to have your meals available to you. But generally, a lot of times you don't have that flexibility, so you may need to eat out more. A couple other things that come when you're actually getting the house is an appraisal. In Canada, it's usually $200 to $300. And a home inspection, which can range around $500 to $800. The other thing is legal fees. So when you're buying, you got to pay some legal fees. That can range from about $1,400 to $1,800 depending on where you are, and that includes legal fees and disbursements. As you keep coming up, title insurance is becoming more important with fraud, so you'll want to have that. That's another cost. And then finally, these will be very much more personal and dependent on what's going on with your house. But you may have some basic home decor that you have to add in. So curtains, doormats, some other things like that. Some really basic things that you'll need as you're in that house for the first time. And then the other option is furniture. Maybe you need some, other times you may take over time to add that furniture. But what you're going to do is figure out what that cost is. You know, I did a basic figuring. For a family that's going to use movers and all of that, you can look at around $3,000 to $4,000. Let's say it's $3,600. I'm going to need to save $300 a month to make sure I have all of that set aside. So that's your bonus tip, making sure that you've accounted for moving costs within your budget, because that's above and beyond the down payment. And there you have it. Those are my lessons learned on what I would look for when buying a new house and how I would approach it. All in the hopes of helping you to avoid that trap of using my down payment, got the house, and then thinking that money I'd save for down payment can go to other things. A lot of times it'll end up having to go in the house. And so you'll have less surprises, make that transition a lot more helpful. So if you found this video helpful, I really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. It helps me gain more audience and towards my goal of helping people improve their financial literacy through budgeting and being more comfortable with the money they have. And as I mentioned in this video, property maintenance is really important in a house. So if you want to learn more, check out this video on property maintenance. Thanks, and see you guys again next time.